long-read.
Welcome to The Buck Stops Here, the official audio program of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buchner, the Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and the sister sites, the fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're taking the Starship Fame all the way out to the West Coast in California today. We're going to be having a great chat with Evelyn McDonnell, a professor of journalism over at Loyola Marymount. The reason why I wanted to talk with her today is she is not just a director of journalism, but has written a lot about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame from a female perspective. A lot of great articles that she's written that we'll provide the links to, and a couple books that she's also done about this topic. And because of her work, she actually has a vote on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it's my pleasure to have this conversation with Evelyn, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Evelyn, thank you so much for being on my show. It is a privilege to talk with you.
Thank you for having me.
So the first time I actually became aware of your writing was a piece that you did. I think it was retweeted by Future Rock Legends, a site that really inspired what I've worked to create at NotInHallOfFame.com. And it was a long reads, a piece on women in rock and roll, essentially talking about the gender gap and the percentage of the Hall of Fame. And I'm going to sort of put that out afterwards so that everyone can read that. And I encourage everyone to read it. I've read it 4 times to make sure I understood it properly, because the first time I read it, I think I had a bit of a white male visceral reaction to it.
Uh-huh.
And I sort of thought, okay, well, that percentage doesn't seem that bad. And then I really thought about it more and more and more. And can you sort of talk a little bit more about that particular article and then how you sort of came in to find this as a passion of yours?
Right. So that particular article was called The Manhandling of Music History. And this was just a sort of phrase, a term that I'm trying to coin. Not copyright, but coin. Sort of like, they use the term whitewashing to talk about how people of European descent take over culture from people of African descent and make it their own. Mm-hmm. So I was sort of trying to talk about how the history of rock and roll not only gets whitewashed, which I think people know that, are much more aware of, how that has happened repeatedly in history, from Elvis Presley to including the hip-hop with Eminem, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe people aren't aware of the way in which women are left out of the history books and the institutions of rock and roll, and the ways in which they are sort of kept out of the music industry by gatekeepers too. So it's kind of like a two-pronged effort, and actually, in the case of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's some of the same men who have not been good to women as they've tried to establish their careers, have then also kept them out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'm specifically talking about like Ahmet Ertegun and John Wenner, the two main founders of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's what the article was just looking at. And I've written about the gender trouble at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years before that for Salon, but that didn't get as much attention as the long-read story did. I think partly because things have actually gotten worse in 10 years, or not even 10 years, in the 5 years between those stories. So the notion that somehow we're progressing, we're not, and the percentage of women has actually gone down. And just so your listeners know what those numbers are, I counted, with the help of my research assistants, we counted every individual that has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since 1986, and figured out the percentage. And when that article came out, it was 7.77% of inductees are women. And so that's including all the individual, members of every band, because each person is individually, right. When you induct Rush, they're not just a single act. Each member of the act gets inducted, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's actually really important because they also all become voters for future inductees. So this is part of the hole that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been digging for itself. And it started off from a terrible point. I mean, the very first year, there were 0 women out of the 15 acts that were inducted. None of them had any women. There's no women. So last year was 7.7%. Actually, when you update it for this year, the class that was supposed to have been inducted when? Like any day now, right? Or I can't even remember when the ceremony was supposed to be. It was canceled, or postponed, I should say. But anyways, it's gone down again to 7.68%.
Oh, okay. So it's even lower than it was when you published that.
I had published that in Billboard magazine, actually.
Oh, okay.
In the fall, after the let's see. Well, when the nominations were announced, I wrote for Billboard. I might not have published this actually, except out of my own blog, since the actual inductees were announced. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing I really loved about that article is that it sort of addressed not just the institutional reasons why that happened, but also just didn't leave out a number and not try to explain it. Because a lot of people have taken that number and just did, I'll just say, a half-assed article just saying, here's the number, that's it, fix it. But you do talk about, like, essentially how that came to be. One reason, of course, is the glut of so many rock bands with all-male members. So it's not like you're...
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not like you're just saying, well, it should be 50-50. It's just saying, well, here's what it was, and here's what we can do to fix it. Oh, and by the way, institutionally, it's always sort of been against women. And I think that's sort of what I had to reread again, because my first thought, and again, I felt a little bit bad. That's why, because I thought, well, this doesn't seem all that wrong. And then the more I thought about it, well, the reasons why it sort of got this way is because there's a lot of women, as you sort of talked about, who didn't feel comfortable pursuing a career in rock music, or music for that matter, unless it was in a certain genre. Or even you also touched about how there was a Rolling Stone writer who just felt uncomfortable?
Yeah. Well, and then also there's also a problem of definition, right? Which the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has really struggled with, and I actually think that a lot of people who work at the museum or who are very instrumental in it do have a somewhat progressive and flexible definition of rock and roll, and they have been this year they're inducting the Notorious B.I.G. and Whitney Houston, which some people have really complained about.
Right.
So I applaud them for those kinds of choices, and it gives me hope, and it's certainly not all bad. They've made some great choices, and then they've made some not great choices. I just think it's a lot. Okay, so Biggie and Whitney Houston has been inducted. There are no female rap artists in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Not yet.
Queen Latifah, or Salt and Pepper, or MC Light, or haven't ever even been nominated. As opposed to, Def Leppard's in there, Red Hot Chili Peppers are in there. I mean, these are, and I think those are somewhat definitional problems. That we associate rock and roll with like long-haired white guys playing guitar.
And I think there's a lot of people who still define it that way. To me, rock music is nearly impossible to define because what it started out being in the 50s is certainly not what it is today. If you listen to a classic rock station, I think that you're getting a skewed definition of what a genre is really supposed to be. And there's so many different subgenres of music. Like for me personally, I am pounding, and it's funny, I brought you on to talk about Women in Rock. The band that I want in more than any other group right now is Kraftwerk. Granted, it's 4 other white guys, but if the Rock and Roll Hall
Yeah.
of Fame defines itself by only like two rules. One, you've got to be 25 years after your first album. The second being you've got to be influential. Then craft, and granted, they've nominated them many times, and it's up to the voters to decide that. And you're a voter, are you not?
I am a voter, yeah. After my Salon article came out in 2011, and I think the year after that, they finally asked me to be a voter. And I have to say, I mean, this is after I've been, a pretty prominent music critic and scholar for 25 years. I mean, I was the music editor at the Village Voice and the music critic at the Miami Herald, and I had, edited and written several books. And they included me in what they admitted was a burst of affirmative action. And they asked me, are there other women and people of color that, you think should be voters? So which, on the one hand is great because they, were clearly trying to change things. But it also just shows how problematic they have been and how locked and
right.
Everybody talks about it as being a club, and it's a boys' club, and it's there was a bunch of guys who worked in the music industry together for a long time who started it, and unfortunately, they still dominate it.
Do you know how many voters there are? Because that's one thing I haven't been able to figure out.
No, and this is the other thing that they're really not transparent for what's a public institution, in the sense that they do get public money. They do not. Not only do they not say who the individuals are in the voting membership, they actually don't publicly announce who the nominating committee is. The only time they reveal that is at the induction ceremony in the program, which then the wonderful Future Rock Legends website that you referred to then publishes that, and God bless them. Such a great website and resource. They say there's 1,000 voting members. I mean, what we do know is, as I said before, that everybody who gets inducted gets a vote. And so we know that the voting membership is 90, that there's a portion of it that's 90% male, right? Mm-hmm. Because over 90% of the inductees are men.
Right.
And there's, how many total inductees are there now?
And I guess while you're sort of looking at that, because you tend to sort of, I don't want to say stick with your own, because I think like someone who's going to become a member probably next year, Dave Grohl, who did that wonderful job on HBO. What was that? Sonic Highway. So he certainly comes across as someone who really wants to understand the history of music. Gene Simmons pretty much has openly said rap is not rock. So you know that when he's checking off the box, he's not going to be selecting Notorious B.I.G. That was
right.
I don't think I'm off. I don't think I'm wrong in making that statement based on some of his past comments.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been very clearly opinionated about that. Right. And, and Nirvana did the amazing act of having all women artists sing at the induction ceremony when they performed. So they had, different women singing on different songs.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So Grohl will have... Does that give him 2 votes?
Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
Does that give Dave 2 votes? You
mean if he gets inducted with Foo Fighters?
Yeah, because I'm assuming he's going to get in right away. So he's already got... I wonder if the double... As you mentioned, the Clyde McPhatter Club, and for those who are not aware, he was the first individual to be inducted twice.
I don't think you get to vote twice. I hope not. That's a good question. I've never thought about it. Maybe a question for Neil, Future Rock Legends. He probably knows. He knows all those. Arkina. I would hope not. That would again, there's only one woman that's been inducted twice.
And it just finally happened.
Stevie Nicks last year. Yeah. And, that's one of the big outrages is that Tina Turner is not in on her own. She's only with Ike Turner. Carole King is not in on her own as a performer. She's there as a songwriter with her and spouse, Jerry Goffin.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad Stevie got in, but I actually think Tina and Carole deserved it more.
So would those be the two people that you're the most passionate about? If you were to sort of like have, like if there were like 5 artists, and I just want to put you a bit on the spot here, that you would sort of like champion more than anyone else, who would it be?
Wow. Yeah, I think that Tina and Carole in on their own would be definitely in that top 5. Tina would be number 1. It's just such an outrage. And by the way, apparently there's a couple men on the nominating committee who said in another podcast that if Tina Turner, they would only vote for Tina Turner on her own if Ike Turner was also inducted on his own.
That sounds a little strange.
They're in together, which is horrendous. And they said, horrible things about her. I would say the Go-Go's.
I love the Go-Go's. Yep.
I love the Go-Go's. That Beauty and the Beat was such an important breakthrough album, and they continued and continue to still have a career and impact. And, they had a Broadway show last year based on their music, which is, by the way, Broadway is where women musicians go to get revenge in the Rock Hall of Fame. It's very interesting how many women, including Carole King and Tina Turner, have had Broadway musicals based on their work or about them that are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Who else? I would actually vote for LaBelle, the band LaBelle,
mm-hmm.
which includes the singer Patti LaBelle.
Yep.
I have 4 now, so I get one more. God, I'm going to say someone, and then I'm going to regret that I didn't say someone else. I would say Big Mama Thornton.
Yes.
Original singer of Hound Dog. Just an important rock pioneer. And again, talking about how rock and roll history got rewritten as the history of white men. There's an iconic black woman. I think her version of Hound Dog is better than Elvis's.
I think a lot of people would agree with you, and more people would agree with you if they actually heard it.
Right.
Because a lot, I'll admit, I'm one of those people. My dad was a big Elvis fan, and so I heard all the Elvis stuff growing up. And it wasn't until, I think, in my early 20s, and God, I'm getting old. I'm going to be 48 now, that I even heard the original version from Big Mama Thornton, and it blew me away. It's like, wait a minute, Elvis is actually singing to a dog? This is what this song's always meant to be.
She just roars it, that is so great. It's so great. Yeah, and, again, she was a big, statuesque woman, black woman, also, ball and chain, that Janis Joplin later made famous. And at least Janis Joplin always credited Big Mama Thornton and shouted her out and honored her. Elvis never acknowledged her precedent.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, and not to say, I actually think that Elvis was an amazing artist. But, he was the ultimate appropriator of black music, and retelling it to white audiences. And reselling it well, not a Pat Boone sanitized version. But I mean, the head of his record label said, I was looking for a white man who could sing, like a black man sings, and I found it in Elvis.
Right. Yeah, it was actually...
he was good looking.
I'll assume so. But yeah, that definitely helped. I think my favorite 50s singer, it's always a toss between Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly. But I'm not really sure that Buddy Holly would make the girls swoon.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so, but I think he did. People like that nerd look.
It helped me get married, so yes.
But I mean, obviously, like Elvis was a very sexualized performer, and it's all about his hips. And
well, one of the first people I ever had the chance to interview was a gentleman named Charles Connor, who drummed for Little Richard, who is no longer with us, and I had the pleasure of asking him what he thought about, like you mentioned, Pat Boone, like of the Pat Boone covers. And I was sort of expecting a reaction about how he hated it. And he told me, no, we loved it because people would seek out what the real music really was. So he would say to me that it didn't bother him that much with sort of the whitewashed, literally whitewashed covers. Because, the true music fans would sort of find the originals. So he didn't have a hatred, because he said he met Elvis many times. And Elvis would always sort of like praise him and his work.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he was certainly aware of the circumstance beyond it. I mean, Elvis was sort of that necessary cog to get people to sort of find the original. So I thought I was expecting one answer, got a totally different one, and just made me think of it very differently. And it made me think of that's kind of what Eminem kind of did and the Beastie Boys did later. It just brought more attention towards the genre of all the music that they were inspired by.
Right. Yeah, but I don't think Elvis really did that, though. Janis Joplin did that. She helped get a gravestone for Bessie Smith, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she acknowledged Big Mama Thornton, and I don't, well,
I think Elvis's music might
say about Elvis.
I think Elvis's music might have gotten people to look beyond it. Elvis himself may not have been that person to say, "Hey, go check this out."
Right. Well, I mean, there's no doubt that there was an exciting integration happening in music in the 1950s, and it wasn't simply about whitewashing, but that definitely white audiences were listening to black music in a way that hadn't happened for a while, right? And that white artists were playing black music and black artists were playing white music, right? Like Chuck Berry and Ray Charles played country music, played country songs too. Like there was certainly this interesting format. But still, the number one artist that came out of that era is Elvis Presley. And I think, and in the 60s with the British invasion, that became even more prevalent. It was really like, the white British lads who recolonized rock and roll. They loved it and they played it well. And I think a lot of them, did pay their respects and their dues to the artists that inspired them and certainly covered their music. And I think that it's harder for guys to acknowledge the women that came before them. So I mean, it's taken a long time. It took a long time for Sister Rosetta Tharpe to get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Mama Thornton still is not in it, right?
Right, and I think also too, when they finally nominated her, I think she was only nominated once before she got in, but she didn't. I'm assuming she didn't win the vote because she was then put into the category of early influence.
Right.
And that almost belies a lot of the other problem that, you've discussed with the transparency of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I know, a lot of people who follow the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame history know of, two things. Well, there's always two incidents that always stuck out in my mind. One, when the Dave Clark Five won their vote, but then Jan Wenner switched it up to have Grandmaster Flash in. And I'm kind of torn on that because I do think Grandmaster Flash is a more important act to be in than the Dave Clark Five. But either you're respecting democracy or you're not.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. And the other was Smokey Robinson getting in without the Miracles when technically he didn't qualify.
Wow. And then didn't they instate the Miracles and a number of of other backing bands
right.
in like one fell swoop one year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, what about the rest of us?
Yeah. I mean, no, there's definitely, and I kind of said, there are some good things. I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, good intentions, and I think that was a good intention to get Grandmaster Flash in. I just think that, maybe they should have just said, okay, Dave Clark and Grandmaster Flash, right?
Well, they could have easily. Apparently, he finished 6th, so they could have easily just, put them in there. Yeah. I believe it was one of the singers. Was it the one? I forget which member. I was just reading this too. Who passed away because they got in the next year, but he wasn't available for the ceremony because he died. So I mean, I'm sort of torn with that because I agree with you. It's like there's so many great intentions of this, and the entire thing, that entire argument of who should be, what's rock, what's not, created really the site that I've built based on like virtually every Hall of Fame that I could think of. But this is this is the argument that it's built on. If it wasn't for me getting drunk in a bar, hearing people whine about Madonna getting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we wouldn't be talking today. Because that ain't rock and roll music. I don't know. I don't know why I did it in that southern twang because I'm from Canada, and that's.
Well, yeah, because I guess it's a kind of a redneck, classic rock kind of attitude to have. And, I was glad that Madonna got in, and then I was glad that didn't she play a Stooges song, because the Stooges hadn't gotten in. It proved why she deserved to get in, that she was badass enough to do that. What do you think the Rock Hall should do to try to, become more legit? And
I'm an advocate, and because I follow not just the Rock Hall, but baseball, hockey, football, basketball, the Country Music Hall, and one thing that a lot of halls do well and they don't do well, transparency is the worst among almost every Hall of Fame. Basketball Hall of Fame, I don't know who the voters are, no clue. Same football, baseball, you know who the voters are, but it's up to them whether they want to tell you who they voted for. The younger voters tend to, but like you said, you're a voter and you don't even know who you're voting with.
Right.
I mean, all the inductees are. Some of them probably don't even bother to vote. I imagine the Sex Pistols don't vote.
Right. I bet you Steve Jones votes. Yeah. I also think that, they stacked the deck for so long against women, on the nominating committee, and I assume in the voting body. And I know that they're trying to change that. It's just sad that they got themselves to this point. And, I feel like there is some way that they're going to have to, reconstitute the voting body to try to, get out of this hole that they're in. And
that might be why they're not sort of announcing that, because if that sort of came out, it might come out very white, very male.
Right. Sorry, I swear I'm getting more phone calls and texts than I ever get. Just talking in the 1 hour I'm talking to you.
I'm actually just amazed my dog's being very well behaved. He's made his appearance on many a show I've done.
Yes, mine is too. So at least we have that going for it.
So yeah, I think the first thing is transparency. Some halls do it better than others, but for the most part, halls of fame tend to keep things tight-lipped. And I think also in the social media age, a lot of the voting members may not want to be harassed. Right,
which I can understand. Mm-hmm. But then again, you have this I guess more for the nominating committee. I mean, I'm not sure that I need to know who every voter is because, as a voter, I don't want to get personally lobbied by everybody who wants in the Hall of Fame. I think the nominating committee has an obligation to be transparent, and that they have an important role, and that we should know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Which, we do, thanks to Future Rock Legends, basically, and thanks to the program. But, there's a new member that the Hall of Fame announced that it was a woman in LA, and I, have found out that it's Linda Perry, but they didn't say that.
And I think it really, everything sort of starts from the top, and like the intentions are good, but I think it goes to, what you said in your article. It's just so much of it is systematic. And how do you get other people to sort of open their eyes a little bit differently? And again, I'll use Kiss as an example, like a band I love and hate at the same time. I have so much great memories going to a Kiss concert. Do I want to listen to their music if I really want to feel melancholy and change the world and the world perception? Nah, Christine 16 doesn't do that for me. But
right. Yeah, I understand that Kiss were a hugely popular band, and I guess they were influential. But I just don't see them as game changers. Like, to me, that's what the Hall of Fame has to be ultimately about, is how people who really had an impact. The course of music history was changed because they existed and made their music.
But I think
and that might not have anything to do with popular success, right?
Yeah. But I think with Kiss, though, they got a lot of people to pick up a guitar. Now, what they did with it after might be a different story. Because they had that iconic rock place in it. If they didn't figure out to paint their faces, would we be talking about them today? No. But they did.
Right.
But
I guess I'm not
agree
sure
with you.
What good band was influenced by Kiss. I do think they influenced, but I think it was a negative influence.
You know what? And that's why I've got that love-hate thing. If I want to listen to great mindless rock music, that's sometimes my go-to. But again, it's not something like, you know what? I'm listening to this, and I really want to I want to pick up my guitar now and figure out what it is that I can do to sort of change music. They're never going to be that. Rage Against the Machine, though, it was Tom Morello who pushed for them pretty hard. So, I guess they're sort of one.
I know. I guess you're right. You're right. And I love Rage Against the Machine. And so I was pretty shocked I was pretty shocked and disappointed when I found out that Tom Morello pushed for Kiss, I have to say. Because, look what they wrought. Look at, now he gave license to Gene Simmons to, badmouth rap in the Hall of Fame. How does Tom Morello feel about that now?
That'd be a great question. I'll have to tweet at him after this and just say, what do you think of this? Useless fact. My wife has met quite a few celebrities when she was working in Toronto. Only two were a-holes. One, I think you pretty much guessed, Gene Simmons. The other, Justin Bieber's dad.
Wow.
Nicest person she ever met, Flavor Flav. Go figure.
Wow. That's funny. So he was like a bad stage dad, Mr. Bieber?
Well, he played the "Do you know who I am" card.
Right.
So one of those, which apparently Gene did that too, but my wife had no idea who he was. She asked me that after that night. That explained who Gene Simmons was.
There was something I wanted to say, just talking about rock and roll bands. I think that this is one of the things that I've noticed about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I wrote in the long read story, and one of the suggestions, remedies I suggest for them, because I believe in solutions journalism. Don't just complain, come up with solutions. So they have a real deficit of women bands and women musicians. When they do induct women, it's almost always solo artists,
mm-hmm.
and then it's solo artists who they induct with their partners, like Tina Turner and Carole King, or Pat Benatar.
Yes. Well, I had a...
Which is at her insistence, but I think that's the way that makes... I think that maybe they were comfortable nominating her because she has, a husband and he's going to come in with her, as opposed to nominating the Go-Go's, who is all women and all very, powerful, provocative, women that, kind of scare men in some ways.
See, I had a different take on the one for Pat Benatar. I was on my weekly show that I do with, I'll give him a shout out to, with Evan Nolan, because we do a weekly Hall of Fame show. I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought maybe they nominated, and I'm blanking on his name. I keep wanting to call him Greg Giraldo. That's a comedian who passed away, but...
Giraldi, I think.
Giraldi, okay, thank you. So I thought that maybe he was part of that because he was part of that creative process, and they were sort of doing that to try and help get her in. Because I thought she was a lock.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to say anything negative about Pat Benatar, but she's never in the top of my list of women who want to get in. I don't see I don't see how she was a game changer. There were so many. And this, she was a figure when I was coming of age musically,
mm-hmm.
And to me, there were so many other women at that time that were more interesting, like Patti Smith or Joan Jett or Deborah Harry or the
right.
Slits or the Raincoats, right? Those are the game changers to me. Those are the women in my Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And they also are like bands of women. Joan Jett was in the Runaways, right?
I was actually surprised that because I thought the Runaways should be in before Joan Jett.
Yeah, well, one of my previous, or one of my books was on the Runaways, right? Queens of Noise, which certainly is a book-length argument about why they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I do think they should, but they never had any major success. Which again, it's not success, but
right. Because if that's the case, we got to kick Velvet Underground out.
Right, exactly. But the Velvet Underground, so many, there's a band that so many bands definitely did form in their wake, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that many bands formed in the Runaways wake. I think it's more because I think they just didn't have. They weren't really, they were presented in this really overly sexualized way, which not. They were presented more to appeal to men than to women.
Okay. It's an interesting.
The record company didn't know what to do with them. And I think there are women who found their way to them, and certainly the Riot Grrrl movement eventually did. But that was 15 years later.
So I know that you've got a conference call coming up. So I want to sort of
Yes, that was my little alert. Sorry.
That's okay. So I just want to sort of end this with a couple. I just want to throw some female artists that I've found incredibly influential that are not in the rock and roll, and just sort of get you sort of rattle off a 1-sentence answer, and just see what you think here. The Shangri-Las.
I think they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they wouldn't be in my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably other girl groups like the Marvelettes that I would put ahead of them.
Okay. Yep. Oh, fair enough. Bikini Kill.
Yeah. talk about a band that had a huge impact, weren't necessarily successful because they kind of refused to play the game of the major label record industry. I would love to see them inducted. I can't imagine it happening.
Okay. So different genre, En Vogue.
A band a great band, probably more successful than groundbreaking. But, really a band that people don't talk about enough.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, I would induct TLC if I was going to pick an all-girl band from that era.
Yeah. No, I know we already touched a bit on that, so I thought I'd just throw this one out a little bit. And what was the other one that I was sort of thinking right off the top of my head? Actually, you touched on that a bit. I want you a little bit more on the Slits.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great punk artists that the Hall seems to have a very 10-foot pole approach to punk music. The Slits, the Raincoats, X-Ray Specs, those are amazing acts. Those records still hold up now. There are still so many artists influenced by those bands, those musicians, those women. But, one of the other, as I'm sure you're very well aware, one of the other Rock Hall's big problems is it's so American-focused. So, I mean, Susie and the Banshees. But, they're British. It's going to be a long time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be always, I don't want to say always American-focused, but even when you ask a lot of the British acts about it, they're pretty nonchalant about it. Because a lot of them just don't think about Halls of Fame the way that we do in Canada and the United States.
Interesting. They have Order of the Night instead. And I'd probably rather be a knight than in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it depends who's knighting me, I suppose.
I guess.
Evelyn, this has been great. I hope we can do this again.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for all the beeping on my phone.
Please, don't worry about it. It's been a pleasure, and I learned a lot. And where can people see your work?
I do have a blog. It's called populismblog.wordpress.com. And you can follow me on Twitter. It's just Evelyn McDonnell at Twitter. And actually, if I have an article, I usually post them in both of those places. So those are the two best places to follow me.
Great. And I'll be retweeting your article, too, on Long Reads that I encourage everyone to take a look at.
Great. Thank you so much. And definitely send me this when it gets posted.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope everyone out there is staying safe. Look for some more content from us at NotInHallOfFame.com, and check for that soon. Thank you so much.